tank.
Oh?
From the Panzer Division.
Oh!
Who brings it here in...
John Banner, who was famous for playing the clumsy but likable Sergeant Schultz on Hogan's Heroes, had a life full of unexpected turns, both on and off the screen. He ran away from the horrors of World War II and became famous in Hollywood. Behind the laughter and catchphrases, John Banner's last years were filled with mystery, an empty house, and unanswered questions about his wealth and legacy. What happened to John Banner in his last days, and what did he leave behind? Stay with us as we reveal the sad story of his untimely death. Childhood. John Banner was born on January 28, 1910 in Stanislaw, Austria-Hungary, now Ivano-Frankivsk, Ukraine, to Jewish parents. Though he initially pursued a law degree at the University of Vienna, his true passion led him to the stage, and he ultimately chose a career in acting. His life took a dramatic turn in 1938, while he was performing with an acting troupe in Switzerland. That same year, Adolf Hitler annexed Austria to Nazi Germany, making it dangerous for Banner to return home. Instead, he immigrated to the United States, where he quickly adapted to his new life and learned English. Settling in Los Angeles, he married Elizabeth Johanna Josephine Julie Rnitz on October 11, 1942. Years later, as World War II raged on, Banner enlisted in the United States Army Air Corps. He completed basic training in Atlantic City and served as a supply sergeant until the end of the war in 1945. His military service was even recognized on a recruiting poster where he posed as an example of dedication and patriotism. While Banner built a successful career in Hollywood, his past remained deeply personal. Fellow Hogan's Heroes actor Robert Clary, himself a Holocaust survivor, later revealed that Banner had lost much of his family to the horrors of the Holocaust. Broadway. John Banner made his mark on Broadway with 3 appearances on the stage. His debut came in From Vienna, a musical revue that ran for 2 months in 1930. That same year he landed a leading role in the comedy Pastoral, though the play had a very short run. In November, his final Broadway performance came in 1947 with The Big Two, another brief production early in his career. Before mastering English, Banner had to learn his lines phonetically, showcasing his dedication to his craft. Breaking into film, Banner appeared in over 40 feature films, often cast in roles that reflected the turmoil of World War II. His first credited film role came in Once Upon a 1942 starring Cary Grant and Ginger Rogers, where he played a German captain. He later portrayed a Gestapo agent in Setnik the Fighting Guerrillas, 1943, a war movie from 20th Century Fox. He didn't like being cast as a Nazi officer, but those were often the only parts that were open to him. Sadly, Banner learned at this time that all of his family members who he had left behind in Vienna had died in Nazi death camps. Hogan's Heroes. John Banner's most famous role was as Sergeant Hans Schultz on the CBS comedy show Hogan's Heroes, which premiered in 1965. Schultz was a clumsy but likable German guard at a World War II prisoner of war camp, and even though he was in charge of watching over the prisoners, he often didn't notice their elaborate plots to spy on Americans and cause trouble with his superiors. This is what made his famous catchphrase, "I hear nothing, see nothing, know nothing." This became shorter over the course of the series and became the even more memorable, "I know nothing, nothing." Banner had used a similar line in a 1961 episode of The Untouchables, which may have been a hint at his future part. Banner's weight gain helped him get the part. Before he married his French wife Christine Gimen on June 19, 1965, he weighed 178 pounds, ca 81 kilograms. He later said that her cooking made him gain 260 pounds, 0.12 t, which helped shape his performance as Schultz. Schultz's warmth and comedic charm came from the fact that before the war, he owned Germany's biggest toy company, which showed how gentle he really was beyond his popularity with audiences. His co-stars loved Banner. In the Hogan's Heroes DVD commentary, Banner's co-stars discussed how much they remembered how kind and giving he was, even though the show romanticized the wartime setting. Banner, who was Jewish, clarified it that Schultz wasn't a Nazi by telling TV Guide in 1967, "Schultz is not a Nazi. I see Schultz as the representative of some kind of goodness in any generation." Banner was in every episode of Hogan's Heroes during its 6-season run. After Hogan's Heroes, he reunited with co-stars Werner Klamper, Leon Asson, and Bob Crane in the 1968 Cold War comedy The Wicked Dreams of Paula Schultz, which starred Ella Summer. After Hogan's Heroes ended in 1971, John Banner got a new comedic role as Uncle Lai, a clumsy gangster on the short-lived sitcom The Chicago Teddy Bears. Despite the short lifespan of the show, Banner maintained his familiar presence on television. His last acting appearance was in an episode of The Partridge Family on March 17, 1972. Not long after that, he retired to France with his second wife, who was born in Paris and knew Hogan's Heroes. Banner was in more than 130 movies and TV shows. Notable movies include The Blue Angel, 1930, in which he played a supporting part, and The Fighting Gorillas, 1943, in which he played a German officer. His TV roles in a wide range of genres showed how versatile he was as an actor. He died on January 28, 1973, 63 years old. Following complications from a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm, John Banner passed away. He was in Vienna visiting friends, having left to escape the Nazis. John Banner rests at the Friedhof Matzleinsdorf Cemetery in Vienna, but his headstone no longer bears his name. Instead, the grave now bears the name Johann Hubner. Austrian burial customs state that grave sites are leased, not owned, and if the lease isn't renewed after 10 years, the plot is given to someone else. Banner now rests under Hubner's headstone, even though his name may not be on it. Mark where he is buried. His role as the likable and clumsy John Banner will live on forever. Sergeant Schultz's performance is still one of the most famous in TV history. Even though he had a sad past, he brought warmth and humor to the part, which helped make Hogan's Heroes a hit. His co-stars loved Banner, particularly Bob Crane, who frequently referred to the 6 years they spent together as the best of his life. Even now, decades after his death, fans still remember John Banner as one of TV's most memorable comedic actors. John Banner's net worth and lifestyle. At the time of his death in 1973, the American actor born in Austria had a net worth of about $3 million. This substantial wealth was primarily the result of his extensive acting career, which spanned over 3 decades and included more than 40 feature films and numerous television appearances, particularly from his iconic role as Sergeant Schultz in Hogan's Heroes. The long-running series provided him with financial stability, allowing him to enjoy a peaceful retirement in France with his wife Christine. One of Banner's most notable possessions was his home, a charming residence in France where he and Christine spent their final years together. The house, much like the actor himself, was warm and inviting. Surrounded by lush greenery, it offered a serene retreat away from the hustle and bustle of Hollywood. With its classic European architecture, the home reflected Banner's preference for a quiet, comfortable lifestyle rather than extravagant luxury. However, after his passing and with no children to inherit his estate, the fate of the house became uncertain. Over the years, the property reportedly changed ownership multiple times. Some sources suggest that it eventually fell into disrepair, standing as a forgotten relic of the actor's final years. The once vibrant home where Banner enjoyed his retirement may now be an abandoned shell of its former self. Despite this, John Banner's legacy lives on through his work. While his home may no longer reflect the life he once had, people all over the world are still laughing at his performances as Sergeant Schultz. Even though he died decades ago, he is still fondly remembered for his comedic roles. His house may fade over time, but his effect on television history will last forever. Huge fans of Hogan's Heroes are stunned after the secrets were finally revealed. The beloved TV show Hogan's Heroes, which ran from 1965 to 1971, cleverly mixed wartime settings with quick-witted comedy. The show was about a group of Allied prisoners in a German P camp who constantly outsmarted their captors, turning what could have been a sad setting into a playground for clever schemes and humor. Colonel Hogan, who was resourceful and quick-thinking, kept both the prisoners and the viewers interested by balancing funny moments with just the right amount of tension. The show struck a unique balance between familiar plots and iconic characters, making it stand out among classic sitcoms. There are many interesting behind-the-scenes facts and little-known facts about Hogan's Heroes that give the show even more depth, whether you've been watching it for a long time or are just now learning about it. These interesting facts give us a look into what made Hogan's Heroes such a timeless classic of reality-based fiction. In an ironic twist, several of the actors who played German soldiers were actually Jewish. Vera Klemper, who played the weak and easily swayed officer, was the most famous of these actors. Colonel Klink Kramer was born into a well-known Jewish family in Cologne, Germany. But his life took a dramatic turn when his family fled the Nazi regime in the 1930s and eventually settled in the United States. Because of his personal history, he was distressed about how his character would be portrayed. He said over and over that he would only play Colonel Klink if the Nazis were never shown in a positive light. His performance as Klink made him a stupid fool instead of a scary bad guy, which added to the show's satire of Nazi authority. Scene 13, where Hogan's Heroes live. Although Stalag 13 was made up, its name came from real German POW camps during World War II. In reality, Stalag was short for Stammlager, which was the name of German POW camps for both enlisted soldiers and non-commissioned officers. Each camp was given a number, but there was no real Stalag 13 like it was shown on the show. The show was free to mix comedic elements with wartime stories, which led to a unique mix of satire, clever antics, and even subtle nods to history that kept viewers amused. The unseen cigar Colonel Klink was almost always seen with his signature 2 items, a mono and a cigar. He always held or gestured with the cigar, but never lit or smoked it on screen. This small but funny detail became a running joke, either to show Klink's lack of follow-through and constant distraction, or just to add to his strange personality. One of his many notable quirks was that he always carried an unlit cigar with him. Sergeant Schultz's famous catchphrase, "I know nothing, nothing," was one of the most memorable parts of Hogan's Heroes. He was played by John Banner and was a bumbling but likable German guard at Stag 13 who preferred to stay out of trouble rather than enforce the rules. The line became one of the most famous in TV history, but it wasn't even in the original script. The banner was improvised during filming when Schultz, as usual, ignored the prisoners. His delivery was so good that it stuck, quickly becoming Schultz's signature phrase. Over time, it turned into a running joke that perfectly captured his character, someone who saw everything but chose to see nothing. Schultz's exaggerated efforts to remain oblivious elevated him to the status of one of the show's most lovable characters. Food, especially his favorite chocolate, would often bribe him, making him unwilling to notice the prisoner's antics. Banner once defended his role as Schultz by saying that he showed a kind of goodness that could exist even in hard times. And even though Hogan's Heroes ended decades ago, Schultz's hilarious attempts to protect himself, punctuated by his famous catchphrase, are still a highlight of classic TV comedy. The French influence on Hogan's Heroes. Robert Clary played the charming and resourceful Corporal Louiseau. Born in France, Clary had a deep connection to the past behind the show's setting. Clary lived through the Holocaust and was held in the Buchenwald concentration camp during World War II. His part in a comedy set during the same war was even more impressive because it was so powerful and moving. A serial number tattooed on Clary's arm from his time in the camp would always remember him of the horrible things he lived through. This was different from his character, who used his wit and cunning to get away from the Germans in a made-up camp. Even though Clary had seen the horrible things that the Nazis did, he never let his past define his career or his spirit. His role in Hogan's Heroes was to show strength and joy in tragedy, not to trivialize the war. Mistakes were made on purpose. At first glance, some viewers may notice what seemed to be historical inaccuracies in Hogan's Heroes, especially when it comes to technology. It wasn't uncommon for technology from the 1950s or 1960s to show up in the show, even though it was set in the 1940s, many of these so-called by leaving out some details on purpose. Anachronisms were often added on purpose to make the story more funny than historically accurate. People never thought the show was a serious war story because it kept a light-hearted tone. These silly errors helped us remember that even though Hogan's Heroes was set in World War II, it was first and foremost a comedy. The military characters in Hogan's Heroes felt more real because some of the show's main actors had real-life military backgrounds. For example, Bob Crane, who played the smart Colonel Hogan, and Richard Dawson, who played the charming Peter Newkirk, both had real military backgrounds. Their results were probably affected by the fact that they had first-hand experience with military life and rules. They added a touch of realism to an otherwise funny setting. The characters' experiences made them seem more real amid the chaos, even though the show was comedic. In some episodes of Hogan's Heroes, you can find hidden references to a wooden signpost with the names of cities and their distances. It's possible that the name of one of those cities, Hamlin, comes from the story of the Pied Piper of Hamlin. This little detail is a delightful Easter egg for viewers who are paying attention, and it shows how the show liked to add subtle references to European history and folklore to its sets. These types of details contributed to Hogan's world becoming more than just a fictitious camp. It became a part of a broader, meticulously designed setting brimming with hidden gems for fans to discover. Hogan's full name is actually Colonel Hogan, but most fans just know him as Colonel Hogan. In the series, Robert Edward Hogan is almost always called by his last name or rank, which is how the military does things. This choice fits the show's setting and shows how friendly the characters were, as they used last names and titles. By adding personal details like Hogan's full name, the show gave fans small glimpses into their pasts, making the characters feel more real and like they could relate to them. A sweet nickname, James Kinchlow, better known as Kinch, and played by Ivan Dixon, had a special relationship with Colonel Hogan that was based on trust and mutual respect. Unlike many of the other prisoners, Kinch had a special way of talking to Hogan. He often called him Colonel. Skipper was a loving nickname that hinted at a bond that went beyond normal military friendship. It suggested a deeper sense of loyalty and friendship in AP camp where trust was paramount. The incident and other small acts like it showed how close the group was and how much they trusted each other's singing skills. Bob Crane, who was famous for playing Colonel Hogan on Hogan's Heroes, was not only a great actor, but he was also a great drummer. Long before he became famous for playing Colonel Hogan on Hogan's Heroes, Crane had built a reputation as a skilled artist, even as a radio host where he often showed off his drumming skills. There were times when the show used scenes where Hogan played the drums to show off his ability. These scenes not only gave the character a fun personal touch, but they also showed fans Crane's real-life musical skills, which blurred the line between performer and part, and made the show even more fun. Bernard Fox showed how versatile he was as an actor by playing two different characters on Hogan's Heroes. Fans may remember him as the clumsy and cocky Colonel Crittenden, but he also played Captain Rodney in another episode. Fox's performances were great because he made each character unique, even though they were all played by the same actor. It's unclear whether this was done to save money or because it was a fun creative choice. Overall, it showed off Fox's range and the depth of ability in the show's ensemble singer on set. Before he was a hit as Corporal Peter Newkirk on Hogan's Heroes and a popular host on Family Feud, Richard Dawson had a successful career as a singer in the UK. His smooth voice and natural stage presence made him a big hit. Dawson became well known in British music before becoming an actor, while Hogan's Heroes was mostly a hilarious show. The actors on the show were all very good at many things, and Dawson's musical background was just one example of the funny side of things they could do. Klink's hat. Colonel Klink's signature hat is an interesting piece of clothing. Even though Hogan's Heroes takes place during World War II, the style of hat he often wore was more common among German military officers in World War I. This subtle inversion of expectations may have been done deliberately to make Klink seem more old and incompetent by combining elements from different eras. History buffs who were quick on their feet could find the show's playful errors and find an extra layer of humor. The same set, Hogan's Heroes, like many shows of the time, had to make the most of its limited budget, so the same buildings were often used as both the outside and inside of the base to create different scenes. The production team switched out or repositioned wall segments as needed. The change was a clever behind-the-scenes trick that showed how creative and efficient the production team was. For most watchers, these transitions didn't even seem like they happened, which shows how much magic goes into making a show happen. Many people are familiar with the catchy theme song to Hogan's Heroes, but what most people don't know is that it has words. Although Bernard Fine, one of the show's writers, penned them, the show never used them. This little-known fact makes the show's history even more interesting. It's fascinating to think about how the words could have changed the mood of the show or given the beloved theme song a new twist. This video is over now. Thanks for being here with us. For more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon. This way, you'll know when the next video is available. I'll see you soon.